We are just days away from Oregon and Washington, and the rivalry stakes don't change. How have the playoff stakes changed after their latest rankings? We talk about that on a crossover of Locked On Ducks and Locked On Huskies.
You are Locked On College Crossover, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Yes, it is that time once again for a crossover edition of Locked On Ducks. I'm Spencer McLaughlin, and Locked On Huskies, he is Roman Tomashoff, and we're part of the same network. It's the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, the number one sports podcast network out there. Thank you all so much of both fan bases for helping make that the case. We're going to talk about how much UW has closed the gap from last year's game, the top strengths for these teams, and we'll have another crossover later this week. I am excited. Is every fan out there? Too bad. This episode brought to you by our friends at Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. So one thing that's definitively on the line, without question, is the bragging rights. We don't have to go into that. I think everybody's fully aware that never changes. Something else, though, I can definitively say after Oregon went past Ole Miss following their win over USC the prior week, the committee chair said it wasn't about the Lane Kiffin drama. It was about what Oregon did against the Trojans, who are still ranked inside the top 20. Oregon is playing against Washington for the right to have a home playoff game. I think after they went up, though, Roman, the likelihood that they would be in at 10-2, they being the Ducks, I think it's solidly higher than it was than when they were at number 7. It's still not 100%, but I think it's over 50.
I would say it's closer to like 90%, to be completely honest with you. Just in terms of what would need to happen around college football for them to not get in at this point, as much as I hate saying this. And by the way, Spencer, I just have to add, it's great to just, bring my, as all the Duck fans like to say on Locked On Huskies, my delusional self over to your comment section while your smug arrogantness comes over to my Locked On Huskies section. It's absolutely beautiful to get
Glorious.
all of that out. But no, I really do think that it's I don't want to say it's a near lock because obviously anything can happen, right? But you just look at what needs to go wrong around college football this weekend for just some of these different things to happen. It's just, it would have to take an absolute disaster for Oregon to not get in at this point. And if that were the case, I would love it.
Yeah, I'm sure you would. And a lot of people in the greater Seattle area would probably enjoy that. But Washington not being ranked does make me wonder, how would they treat a road loss? I think the committee's generally been forgiving with a mulligan for a lot of teams. You look at Alabama right now that has several good wins, also has an awful loss. They lost by 2 touchdowns to a team that might make a bowl game but probably won't. In the ACC,
sure,
which is the 4th best Power 4 league that is out there this year based on the non-conference results. So this certainly wouldn't be that for Oregon. If they go on the road, lose to 8-3 Washington, they become 9-3. Suddenly Washington is ranked. I think in a roundabout way for the committee, if they were to put Oregon in at 10-2, it would be kind of a different take on the Iowa game, where because Oregon wins, because Oregon won against Iowa, the Hawkeyes are no longer ranked. And if Oregon wins this game, that's what is preventing Washington from being ranked. So then if Washington beats Oregon, that suddenly becomes a top probably 20 road loss for the Ducks after they had a 15-point win against a top 20 opponent. So that's the way that it reads to me. I think Oregon got a good outcome in the rankings.
I would say that's fair. And, now it's just time to switch gears here because that's just too much Oregon talk for my liking to open this show. But because so much of this, and I said this earlier in the week on Locked On Huskies, like this should be a 15, 16, 17, somewhere in that ballpark ranked Washington team. If you don't lose at Wisconsin and that loss just stings so badly, I get it. It's awful. It sucks. I punch my wall every day. There are 17 holes in it. I'm glad this camera is where it is because I'm still just mad about that.
I hope you're wearing a boxing glove while you do that.
I am not. That is the most fun part about it. But No, but seriously, that's what this matchup should be. And I look at what Washington season has been, and yeah, you find a way to win this weekend. Absolutely. You're going to be sitting there in that 17, 18, 19 range. That's where you should be as a 9-3 team, where your only losses are, yes, to a bad Wisconsin team, but outside of that, Ohio State and Michigan. So I look at where this win, because I just want to talk about it from the Washington side of things for a minute, from where this win could put Washington. It has to be somewhere in that ballpark, because then you also just start thinking about what that momentum could be, right? Taking that into whatever bowl game it might be, Holiday Bowl, Alamo Bowl, whatever it would end up just being in that regard. You're able to get that 10th win in that scenario and have that just be the just jet propulsion that you're taking into 2026, into the transfer portal. All of a sudden, all these dark horse college football playoff takes that were this close to coming true this season, this close, all of a sudden that just gets ratcheted up next year with a junior Damon Williams, with all these guys that we're going to talk about later on that have made Washington the team that it is. A lot of them are freshmen and sophomores that are just going to get older and get better.
Yeah, and on the one hand, I look at what Washington's done with their schedule and go, man, you blew it.
Yeah.
You blew the chance. I'm not trying to make that specific jab. I'm just saying.
No, it's true.
There's a chance.
100% true.
There's a chance, and it's tough because the game is this week. But would game day have gone to Seattle? Maybe not after going to Eugene last week.
No.
Maybe not. I'm just saying there would have at least been a discussion about it, because you would have been playing for a playoff spot. And now Washington's in the position where they're trying to potentially play spoiler, and you can't know what happens there. But with what Washington has done this year, you can tell me if I'm out of my mind on this. Winning this game is the best thing that they can accomplish this season.
Oh, no, that's absolutely, without a doubt, true. I do disagree on the game day aspect of it all, just because we've seen them just the way everything has gone with that particular show this year and where they're going to the same places over and over again. And I guarantee you that with just, we were here 2 years ago for Oregon, Washington, we're going to go to Michigan, Ohio State like we do every single year. I feel like that still would have been the case with that being a top 15 matchup. But to go back to, your other point of this is the best thing that Washington, can do this season. Like, yeah, that's, what it should be every year with this rivalry game, right? Like, the example I just referenced in Ohio State, Michigan, that's what it's all about every single year at both of those programs, is beating the other school, no matter how good or how bad they are. If Michigan is 1-11, but that one win is Ohio State, that's, going to be just such a significant victory for that fan base, for that program, for everything. And that's the way that this rivalry is and should be treated by both of our respective fan bases. And I believe that it's getting to that level. And the one thing that I want to see just from all of this as we, continue to have this, because it's fun, right? This is what the discourse of college football is. And this is such a big part of it all. But just to continue to have that just showcased on a grander level in the Big Ten is something that I really appreciate about all of this.
I mean, to me, the rivalry feels, it'll get a little more national attention in the Big Ten compared to the old days of the Pac-12. I think that 2023 game you said is the, biggest game you've been to at Husky Stadium.
Absolutely.
And the stakes in that game were enormous, but with Washington being in the spoiler mode, I wonder if that doesn't make them even more dangerous. Like, my upset alert meter internally from an Oregon standpoint, very real. Like, it is over a 5. Do I think Oregon is capable of winning this game by double digits? Yes. Am I as confident that they will as I was USC last weekend? No, I'm definitely not, partially because they're on the road. But I think that Wisconsin loss, yes, on the one hand, it's disappointing for Washington fans. I'm sure it brings the stakes of the game down a little, but it also kind of raises my internal alarm bells of like, man, this is the game. We all know what Oregon is chasing. That's what Washington is going to have mentally, I think, in this game is, man, we go win this one, and we feel like we've changed the trajectory of the program with Jedd Fisch.
I think that's completely fair. And that's one of the biggest things because, like I've been saying, it's on the right track, right? You're making those steps in the right direction.
Absolutely.
You've already surpassed, the win total from last season. That's all great. You surpassed the preseason win totals that our friends at FanDuel were setting. Vegas, all that sort of stuff. You've already, I don't want to say blown past it because you're one past it at this point, right? But you're making those steps in the right direction. And that is just so, so important. And the way that Washington is recruiting right now, you have a top 15 class. You have so many things to just look forward to and say, all right, this is promising. That's promising. But a win over Oregon, especially, being ranked at number 5, being where they are right now, it just, like I'm saying, it just propels that even further, even faster.
Yeah, I'm going to talk on my show tomorrow about the importance of this game for Dan Lanning, but we are going to talk more specifically about these teams. It was a blowout last year, but this is a brand new season. How Washington has closed the gap, how Oregon is different and better in some ways. That is all still coming on this crossover edition of Locked On Ducks and Locked On Huskies. First, this episode brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. The NBA is back, and there's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you miss the start of the game or want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. It keeps every game exciting, especially when your team's making that late push. Now, Oregon's favored in Seattle by 6.5 points. General rule of thumb that I operate with, take the points in a rivalry game. If you don't feel like Washington's capable of doing that, maybe you like Oregon minus 6.5. If you think Washington's winning the game outright, well, plus 6.5 is the easiest bet you could make all weekend. But wherever you're at with this game, with any other game in college football, FanDuel's got you covered. Right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So head to FanDuel.com to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Last year's in the past. We're looking ahead to 2025, Oregon and Washington. And Roman, I want to start with this question. 28-point margin last year. I don't think that's coming to fruition. I'd be thrilled if it did on Saturday, but I know that's part of the reason I'd be thrilled. It's that I know you'd have to go on and do a pod because, that's our job. That's how this
that is the job.
That's how this arrangement works. So from last year's team to this year's team, Washington has obviously gotten better in a number of areas, and the results on the field have shown that. Where do you feel like they have grown the most?
I would have to say it's the offensive line, where it was one of, if not the single worst group in the Big Ten. You look at sacks allowed, it was by far the worst in the Big Ten last season, right? And I look at
I
where
think
they
Oregon
are
got
this
him
year.
for a few last year.
I've heard that. Can't confirm anything at this point in time. But you look at just the upgrades that Washington's been able to make on the offensive line. The group for Saturday is a little bit up in the air, but no matter what it looks like, with right tackle being either Drew Azzopardi or John Mills, and left guard being either John Mills or Paki Finau, no matter what the unit looks like, it has just been so much improved from where it was last year. And the fact that it's because of a lot of young guys is really interesting and just a lot of fun to think about what the future is going to look like in front of Damon Williams, in front of a pair of running backs in Adam Muhammad and Jordan Washington, who've really flashed the last couple of weeks with Jonah Coleman on the sidelines. And Carver Willis is a guy who, fifth-year senior, guy who's not going to be around next season. He's come in and he's done a job. He's been more than serviceable, and he has absolutely just been a leader. He's really taken charge in that room. I love what he brings to the table. John Mills is going to be on all those true freshman All-American lists, which I didn't really know was a thing, that there was a difference between a true freshman All-American list and a freshman All-American list until
There's what?
Yeah, there's true freshman All-American lists now. This is a thing.
But that's separate from the freshman All-American list.
Yeah, there are freshman All-Americans that include redshirt freshmen, and there are true freshman All-American lists at this point in time now. Yeah, okay. All right. I'm glad I'm not crazy. I'm not the only one.
Never heard that before.
Hold on a second. No, so that's a real thing. So that's left guard, and when John Mills had to kick out to right tackle, where his future is absolutely a tackle. We'll see if it's left or right, but he's been stellar at both positions. I've been more than happy with what he brings to the table, what redshirt freshman Paki Finau has brought to the table. That's another guy who has the ability to play guard, maybe play tackle long-term. I look at center. We're going to see backup Zach Henning this week. Landon Hatchett's dealing with a hand injury, so he's been wearing a ball club on his right hand for the last couple of games, and so he can't snap. So he's been solid this year, but he can't snap. He's not playing in this game. At right guard, we started to see a bit of a 50-50 split over the last couple of weeks. And this is what I'm probably most intrigued by in this game is Gieran Hatchett has, another guy like Carver Willis just been asked to come in and do a job for a year. Behind him, and for the last couple of weeks, now that he's eligible to preserve a red shirt, is Washington's highest ranked offensive lineman, recruit from the 2025 class in Champ Talialia. This dude, I've been really impressed with him. Really strong, really physical, 6'5", 340, somewhere in that ballpark. But just seeing what he's been able to bring to the table this season, like in, limited action early on against UC Davis, and then like a 50% snap share over the last 2 weeks, Washington is very clearly building something on the offensive line. And the fact that the guys who have really stood out this year are all freshmen and redshirt freshmen is just a really exciting thought for the future compared to the patchwork group you got a chance to see last year.
That was pretty well explained. That was a lot of really good, concise information. We are nothing if not educators and informers here on the Locked On Ducks and Locked On Huskies podcasts. I want to throw this one out there as well for Oregon fans that just out of spite or being busy with other things haven't watched Washington at all this year. And I'm sure there are more than a few. The offensive line is what I was kind of most curious about. But let me throw this one out there. Washington is getting way more out of the quarterback position this year than they did a season ago. In almost as big of a fashion, it seems to me, as they have gotten more out of the offensive line. It seems like the jump in production in the offensive line has been good, but I feel like when you look at last year's Washington team and how they've grown into this year's squad, it seems like, they're also just way better at quarterback because Damon Williams has become the guy that we thought maybe he could be.
No, absolutely. And that's certainly a big part of it, where I think a big part of, not getting the production that you might have hoped for a guy from like Will Rogers last year does come back to that offensive line, right? And just his style of play behind a group that allowed 38, 39 sacks last season. Like, I do think that, it was a lot. I do think that, I know this is the real hard-hitting analysis here, Spencer. Those two things go hand in hand. Crazy.
Whoa.
I know. I'm blowing your mind over here.
Who could have foreseen? You are telling me for the first time.
Absolutely unbelievable. But it's not even just, the fact that Damon Williams does lead the Big Ten in rushing from a quarterback. It's the biggest thing for me, for people who haven't really gotten a chance to watch him play, is just how efficient he is with the football. Like, he, for the most part, he's thrown 6 interceptions now this year. A couple of them have been pretty bad for somebody who is, in his first full year as a starter, where the one this past week against UCLA, he just led Desmond Roebuck way too far over the middle of the field, turns into a bad throw, an easy interception. But for the most part, he's somebody who's been extremely efficient, throws just an extremely high completion percentage. I think it's somewhere sitting around like 71, 72 at this point this year. But throughout the year, that's been the thing that I've been most impressed with from him, is because, yes, we all knew what he could do as a playmaker with his legs, with his athleticism, because we saw that last year. And now that he's really getting a chance to let it rip all season long, like, we saw it in the Sun Bowl last year. We saw him in this game against Oregon last year, while taking 10 sacks, still complete 85% of his passes. Like, this is still somebody who is just so efficient. And as he continues to grow and mature and develop more chemistry with his receivers, as he's had to see 2 true freshman receivers start for the majority of the year, this is a legit offense that can be one of the best in the Big Ten on a year-in, year-out basis.
Can I make a reference that I think you're going to understand? Of course I
Please.
can, because I'm talking and you're not going to stop me. When you said new, you emphasized the second half of that syllable in a way that made it sound like you were saying Mewtwo, the Pokemon. That is exactly what my mind. You said new, and I was like, is he about Mewtwo? What?
I can't
Some people say new, but some people apparently say new, and that's okay. That's
this
okay.
is the first time anity has ever pointed that out to me. So now
that's the first time I've ever heard it. This is not our first show together.
No, it's not.
It's that's just something I heard. So one thing that I want to throw out there, because I think we'd be remiss if we didn't both get a chance to throw a jab at this. An advice to the Washington communications staff.
Oh.
Don't put on the front of your game notes everything that you accomplished in the 80s, 90s, and early 2000s that
Who could
look
you be
better than
referencing,
Oregon.
Spencer, for Husky fans that might not know?
If you guys haven't seen it, USC quite literally put out the most hilarious set of game notes, which is information that is generally used most often by broadcasters, but goes to donors and some fans and it goes around, goes to press, everybody that's attending the game in the press box as well. And they didn't put anything on there about the game. They just listed USC has all these national championships and Heisman Trophy winners and All-Americans and all this. And then they made little inclusions about wins and things that were vacated by the NCAA.
I think that part's hilarious, by the way.
So anyway, just a word of advice. Don't do that. Don't do that. When we get back, we're going back to football, and we're going to talk about the strengths of each of these teams going into rivalry week. First, this episode brought to you by our friends at Game Time. I went to the Oregon basketball game on Monday night with tickets I got on Game Time. Why did I use Game Time? That's a great question. They don't have endless queues, hidden fees, or prices jumping at checkout like some other ticketing services, but what they do have are great deals, and they're giving the advantage back to fans. You're going to get a great price. You're going to know what to expect. You're going to get your total up front. I've used Game Time to go to sporting events on several occasions. I've used them to go to comedy shows, and I've had a great experience every time. No issues getting the tickets onto my phone. Found a great deal. I looked at what the tickets cost on other services, and Game Time was saving me money. So take the guesswork out of buying college football tickets or anything else with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's promo code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download Game Time today.
Okay, Spencer. So as we kind of dive into what each team's top strength is in this game, I have an idea of what I believe, in terms of looking at the numbers of what Oregon's top strength might be, but I want you to enlighten me as to what you believe it is.
I think something that has to give Oregon fans confidence going into any game is it does kind of feel like this changes on a week-to-week basis. Okay. And there are different players and different groups that are carrying the load, shining, playing exceptionally well. Last week, it was the offensive line. And that group that was banged up, and we'll see how healthy they get this week. Don't know if Poncho's going to go. Don't know if Isaiah World is fully healthy. Alex Harkey's been dinged up for a while. Don't know if Janoris Wilson, who's their third offensive tackle, if he's going to be back because he was out last week. At one point last week, Roman, in the biggest game of the season at the time, because you can put Penn State and Indiana in there, but once you have those outcomes, USC, biggest game of the year, game day in town, Oregon was playing their fifth offensive tackle at one point in the game. And they ran for 179 yards against the Trojans, and Dante Moore was sacked 0 times. Isaiah World barely played at left tackle. Fox Crater, the redshirt freshman, stepped in and was phenomenal. Charlie Pickard, the former walk-on, who I believe, not 100% certain on this, I believe coming into this year is actually the third center, because Bryce Bolton, I think, is the guy that they've been developing at center behind Poncho, who's the clear-cut starter. But Bryce Bolton's been hurt with a season-ending injury for a while. So that group of guys, Kavika Rogers and Fox Crater and Charlie Pickard, amongst others, came in and just won the game. So last week, I'd say the offensive line. But when you go to other games that Oregon's played really well, Penn State, for instance, that was a game where I felt like Oregon's defensive line took over.
Okay.
And they contained the Penn State rushing attack. They pressured Drew Aller, and the defense was phenomenal. Of course, made the play to end it in overtime. So I'm not trying to give a cop-out answer. I think it can be either of those two groups. And sometimes you feel like they did against Minnesota, that it's just Dante Moore is completely dialed. Now, the O-line, of course, has to play well, but he was 27 of 30 for 304 yards and 2 touchdowns. With no interceptions, he set an Oregon single-game completion record with that many attempts. So week to week, I think it changes, but where I think it does start, and the simplest answer for Washington fans that maybe haven't watched a lot of Oregon football this year, the simplest answer is just up front. Up front on both sides of the ball. They're deep, they are talented, and they have all proven themselves capable of producing when put into a little bit of a bind. And you've got NFL guys on both sides, and you've got the depth to be able to not just keep those guys fresh, but also survive an injury or two.
So this is why I was really intrigued by this. And I love your answer, because that's not what I was going to guess. Like, I feel like I've watched a fair amount of Oregon football this year. It's what this rivalry is. You have to make sure you keep tabs on the other team.
Tabs.
I would have gone with the secondary. Yep. Because that's just one of the groups that I think, especially from where it was last year, we're still like a very solid group. I just think that this one is way better and way more talented. And, I don't know if it's Dylan Tiedemann, if it's, some of the guys you have on the outside this season, but I just, especially when you dive into the numbers, that was what really stood out to me as, oh yeah, no, this group is playing very, very well. Like Brandon Finney, like all the numbers that I've seen, whether they be, the very simple ones or the advanced ones, it's, oh no, like that kid's playing very, very well. Yeah,
he is. And last week he had his worst game of the year by far. And I think there could be a little, he's a very passionate player. I think he's going to come out and try to make a statement for however often he gets matched up with Denzel Boston. But yeah,
covering Mekhi Lemon and Jacoby Lane is not easy.
No, he wasn't really covering Mekhi Lemon, because Mekhi Lemon almost never lines up outside. And that sort of matchup stuff we will get into in our Friday.
Reference both of them because
they're both phenomenal. They're both really, really good. Oregon did a great job containing Mekhi Lemon. He had 2 touchdowns, but he had 7 catches for 34 yards. It was his second lowest yardage output of the season. But then a couple other guys were over 200 or over 100 yards each. So for what Oregon has done this year, I start with the trench play, because the secondary game last week, it didn't give me a ton of pause, and I think it's a fair answer to say, oh, the secondary's been the greatest strength. A secondary has, I heard this from an NFL scout a while back, a secondary can only be good if they have a good front four.
I think
if your front four isn't any good, Washington has a couple of NFL guys in the secondary, and Ephesians Prysock and Takario Davis. They could look straight up silly if the front four can't pressure Dante Moore, and you'll probably sit there as a Washington fan going, where's the pass defense? Where's this great secondary? What's going on? If your front four can't get there, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you have Deion Sanders on the back end. You can't cover for 3 to 4 seconds against great receivers. You can't allow them to take 50-50 downfield shots when guys like Jacoby Lane are really good. So, and Oregon was okay getting pressure. Mostly good, but not always perfect against Jaden Maiava last week. So, I think the secondary has been really good. They've outperformed my expectations because they're young. I think they showed some of that youth last week, and this is certainly a bounce back opportunity. But I want to throw it to you to wrap today's show and just go with the same question, which is, what is Washington's greatest strength?
First, can I ask you a strength? I have to ask you a quick question.
Hit me.
Strength. How old are you?
How old am I?
Yeah.
28.
Okay, good. Me too. I don't know why Deion Sanders was your answer there when it absolutely should have been Darrelle Revis. I needed to get that out there.
Well, I think
I love Deion Sanders. I do.
No,
but I got to grow up watching Revis Island, man.
I remember Revis Island. Dude, I had this gaming computer that I won in a middle school auction at Uplands Middle School growing up. People from Oregon will know what that is. And I played games on that all the time. And for a while there, because I just thought it was cool, even though I'm a diehard Seahawks fan, my background was that meme of like lost ... on Revis Island. Like, I remember that. It's just that Deion Sanders is widely considered the best defensive back of all time. And there's a pretty compelling argument for that.
Oh, no, I don't disagree with that. I just, my fun fact in the same realm, since you got to share one, as all my everydayers know, and probably hate me for it, I'm a huge Patriots fan. I have a Darrelle Revis Patriots jersey from the one season he was in New England, and it is one of my favorite things.
Okay, back to Washington now.
Yeah, that's right. I had to get that in there because of the Seahawks thing too. Yeah, that's right. But no,
that's a rare moment of unity for me and the Washington fans out there, because I bet most of you are Seahawks fans,
and that was why.
And you're thinking, Roman, can you stop talking about that stupid franchise that's good again and nobody wanted that? And I'm right there with you, Husky fans. I am right there with you.
You're welcome. I just got you some sympathy with Husky fans.
Oh, wow. That
was my galaxy brain.
Yeah, that's what I've been seeking since I woke up in the morning.
No, when I look at Washington, it comes back to two things. I think it's when Washington is at their best, they're playing a very balanced brand of football on the offensive side of the ball. And it comes down to you have so many threats who can beat you in the running game, right? Because we've seen that now for the last couple of weeks. Damon Williams in this last game against UCLA had 6 carries, 56 yards, and 2 touchdowns. And on the first one, that 25-yard quarterback keeper just right up the middle, watching him get 10 yards downfield, like being up in the press box at the Rose Bowl, which was a tremendous experience, by the way. Seeing him get 10 yards downfield, have 3 defenders around him, and then just shift into a gear that they don't have to beat them to the pylon was just otherworldly, because you have that. You have the strength between the tackles in guys like Jonah Coleman and Adam Muhammad. You have another dude who was a 10-2 guy back in high school in the 100-meter dash in Jordan Washington, who showed off his speed a couple weeks ago, the 68-yard touchdown. Seeing all those guys combined with what Jonah Coleman is, and everybody knows he is and can be when he's fully healthy, is a really exciting thought, because now that this receiving core is getting closer to full strength, now that Denzel Boston is going to be able to handle a full workload in this game, according to Jed Fish, when you don't have to necessarily lean super heavily on the run or the pass, and you were able to work in some play action, work in some other things to get Damon Williams outside of the pocket and get him moving and get somebody to trail him outside the pocket, whether it be a quarterback spy, whatever else it might be, what have you. Those are some of the things that made Washington's offense really effective. But one of the, real hidden gems on this team has just been the defense as a whole, where you talk about 2 NFL guys in the secondary in Takario Davis and Ephesians Prysock. Spencer, I disagree with you. There's at least 3. I love Rashawn Clark at the nickel and everything he's been able to do since taking over as a redshirt freshman here down the stretch. He's been tremendous. But Alex McLaughlin, this team's leading tackler.
Great name.
I had a feeling.
Great name.
And
great name. I hope Oregon wins and that guy has a great game.
He's got great hair too. It's a whole vibe. It's absolutely incredible.
Well, I can't relate to that.
See, there you go. Now I'm knocking you back down a bit. It all balances out here on a Locked On College crossover. But the defense as a whole has allowed less than 300 yards in each of its last 3 games. Now, yes, it's been playing against bad offenses, but that was just something that in previous years we have not seen. And a fun fact is that Washington's defense this year has not allowed more than 24 points to anybody. Ohio State, some of these other top teams on the schedule, doesn't matter who, that is the most amount of points they've given up this year. The last time that they didn't allow a number over that was in 1991. And I'm just going to leave it at that, because we don't have time to fight about what that means, on this here show. But I think that is a really important distinction, because all 3 levels of the defense have been playing so much better. The pass rush is really starting to click as Ryan Walters has changed his defensive philosophy a little bit this year. The linebacker play, especially from guys like X-Ray Alexander and freshman Zadrius Rainey-Saleh, has been absolutely tremendous.
Sorry, his name is what?
Zadrius Rainey-Saleh.
X-Ray Alexander?
Oh, X-Ray Alexander. Yes.
Oh.
Yeah, great names on this Husky team. But combining that with all the talent you do have on the back end, what Ryan Walters has been able to do with this Washington defense this year has been just absolutely tremendous to watch.
We'll wrap it there for today. We'll have another crossover, go in-depth on the matchups that will define this one. He's Roman Tomashoff, Locked On Huskies. I'm Spencer McLaughlin, Locked On Ducks. Appreciate everyone listening. I'll see you next time. And until then, hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day.